I'm wondering if this is the bronze colossus that's trapped in my fort, actually. Yeah, it is. Okay, so this bronze colossus, Otat, the contested lance. This bronze colossus, by the way, has had a really rough life. Became an enemy of everybody, attacked a bunch of people, struck down a lot of dwarves, murdered a bunch of dwarves in my original mountain home, murdered a bunch of goblins in Stalker Curse, murked a bunch of elves in Martyr Jump, beat the crap out of more elves in Combined Fences and Age Fiend and Kindling Curse, became an enemy of more people, murdered more goblins, blasted more humans, obliterated some elves, and struck down even more goblins, even more humans, obliterated even more goblins, even more kills, wall of strike downs against goblins, and ticked action, not ticked. I was reading that as ticked diction. Ticked action became an enemy with more people, and then made a grand mistake after many years of this stuff. Fought a bunch of elves in the Braided Blizzards. In fact, an elf even confronted him intentionally and was splatted. Fought with us in an assault on Ironshore, our first fortress, known as the Crazed Attack in defense of Ironshore, and clashed with a bunch of elves in Ironshore, and then got, I'm assuming, stuck in that year. Either that was the year that we caught it, or it got caught in the year 229, and then after we returned it, I think it actually defended us. Okay, so we founded Tour Shadows in 229, meaning it got out in 229. Okay, a KV boar died of old age. Well, that's sad. So right here, in the year of 229, the constructive orb at the settlement of Ironshore regained their senses after an initial period of questionable judgment. A couple dwarves settled in Ironshore. The complex hate attacked the Long Key at Ironshore. The complex hate, of course, being goblins. So goblins attacked the Ironshore. And that was the, what was the name of it? The goblin outmatched Rag Boot Speeches with a cunning plan, and the attackers had a strong positional advantage in Ironshore. The Flute of Trade attacked, so that's the elves, attacked the Long Key at the constructed orbs at Ironshore, and Thaddeus led the attacks, and the dwarves were led by Rag. The elves' tactical planning was superior, and had a strong positional advantage in Ironshore, and they clashed with 70 elves. So they got attacked by 70 elves right after we left. So the elves attacked Ironshore, our fortress, when we retired it, and they let the Colossus out. Either the elves let it out, or the dwarves let it out, and it saved the fortress. Look at this. It clashed with 68 elves, so the dwarves killed 2 out of 70. We retired it. We didn't abandon them. The dwarves killed 2 of 70, and the Colossus killed 4 of 68, plus all of these. And the dwarves helped as well. So literally, they also killed a pig. That's sad. And a boar. Oh no, did they kill my ham radio? Oh, that's so sad. But yeah, it really looks like the Bronze Colossus very much, like, saved us here, or saved the fortress, so I think it's for the best. And then later, after clashing with 43 elves, or slaying 10, it settled, or sorry, it did kill one of my KV boars, named Syrup Fang. Reg Syrup Fang. After that, it appears that Othat just left, and then went to Tour Shadows, killed a bunch of my livestock, mortally wounded Rag, that guy from what's it called? The guinea pig in my current fortress, Tour Shadows, and then was struck down. Oh, sorry, and then wasn't struck down, caught in a cage, which isn't listed here, obviously. So he's now trapped in my fortress. Ah, there we go. Yeah, you were struck down. So this is Old Zwari, who was our queen in Ironshore. Was born in 149, the daughter of Teked and Uvash. was childhood friends with an elf who lived in what faction? Who was part of the Flute of Trade, who we went to war with shortly after. Oh, this is sad. You were childhood friends with an elf who just a couple of years later was part of a faction that murdered all of us. You became queen in 11 years later, which was the year that this elf's faction invaded us. And you found a lover with Amos, but broke up, and then became lovers again. So had an on-again, off-again relationship with somebody named Amos. In the mid-autumn of 198, as the elf monster slayer Thulu Sinclan of the factional animal formed a false friendship with Kib in order to extract information in Jumped Flare. So there was an elf who was pretending to be part of a friendly faction at the time, extracting information from you. You settled in Helirax, and then the factional animal, we're gonna have to read about this elf. The factional animal then were the ones that betrayed us and went after us. I think that's how that worked anyway. I might have the factions backwards, but either they were currently at war with them, or that was the faction that then wrecked us. I'm currently at war with both of them. Settled in Helirax in 227, settled in Ireshore, became a member of the Long Key, fought in sieges in defense of Ironshore, fought in siege of Grips in defense of Ironshore, became a glassmaker, became a member of the Walled Guild and the Gloved Guild, fought in assault of disembowelment and the defense of Ironshore, fought in the crazed attack of the defense of Ironshore. That was after I retired it. The Bronze Colossus clashed with 68 elves in Ironshore, slaying 4, and Kib was struck down by an elf in Ironshore. Geshud became a member of the Long Key, Glassmaker, and Ironshore. Seems like you lived in Ironshore. The dwarf Geshud lived in Ironshore, became a member of the Walled and Gloved Guilds. You fought in a bunch of defenses. Your foot was ripped by an elf. You fought in the Savage Siege and the Assault. You clashed with 24 humans in Rockdust. So you moved to somewhere called... never mind. You attacked Rockdust. You were one of the soldiers attacking Rockdust. And you clashed with 24 humans and, I guess didn't die. Oh, sorry, wait, hold on, what? A dog clashed with 24 humans? I'm confused by that. Oh, I see, you had a war dog, okay. So you had a war dog and your dog clashed with 24 humans. You, fought in the Steamy Assaults, and settled in Boot Marks. Hey, Spy Rocks. And Uvash then clashed with 697 goblins, slaying 2. And then you were struck down by a goblin in Boot Marks. So the new king sent armies out, I'm assuming, to attack some place called Boot Marks. Which was a dwarven fortress at one point, which I think we settled. Yeah, actually, okay, so this was one of the forts that we made. So right at the beginning of the playthrough of the Constructive Orb, remember how we made like 12 forts? It looks like this was one of the ones that was taken over, because this one grew quite well, actually. It like, Boot Marks grew right up until the year 229, it seems. Yeah, so it grew all the way up until 221, and then the Constructive Orb attacked the Wally Pass at Boot Marks, and the dwarf Uvash led the attack, and the defenders were led by an elf. Wait, hold on. Then when did they take over it? Okay, so hold on. No, it looks like they took over it in 219. Okay, yeah, so we made this fortress right off the bat, right? We built it and retired it, which is the regain. Let me start from the beginning here. The Plank of Chances of the Constructive Orb at the settlement of Boot Marks regained their senses after an initial period of questionable judgment, which is us forming and retiring this as part of building this faction. The abysmal droplets attacked the Plank of Chances at the Constructive Orb, and this elf led the attack, and the defenders were led by Tekid. The attackers outmatched us with a cunning plan and obliterated us. And then it looks like the original 7 were just obliterated. And they, even my livestock help, looked at this. A mule clashed with 45 elves and struck down one. This mule is a war hero, chat. Was born in 214 of unknown parentage, fought in the singed assaults and defensive boot marks, clashed with 45 elves and took one down. Shoutouts to that mule. What a mule. What a good mule. This yak cow clashed with 45 elves and boot marks. This blue peacock was struck down by an elf and did nothing of value as per normal. And then they defeated us and moved in. And it appears that our new king... Yeah, so after I retired, this, like, my Iron Shore with the king, with the 200 dwarves, the new king started attacking this site. And it seems like they've done some good. But, and then here in the, yeah, so they attacked them, and this was where Snail's dwarf was killed. Geshud, this dwarf up here. The constructed orb defeated the wealthy pass at the abyssal droplets and took over boot marks once again. And they named the local dwarven government the Prusse Basement. And then all of these dwarves moved in. So not only did we win, we reclaimed the fortress in the behind-the-scenes simulation while I was making that new fort. Hey, Linux. That's only the beginning. Because the complex hate in the year 230 attacked the Prusse Basement at constructed orbs at boot marks, and a goblin led the attack, and the defense were led by a dwarf named Kilob. The goblin outmatched them, but were unsuccessful in actually reclaiming boot marks. But the Sins of Defense in the same year also attacked, and a different goblin led the attack. And the goblin put forth a sound plan and had a strong positional advantage. And then the complex hate attacked them. And then the complex hate attacked them again. And then the Sins of Defense attacked them again. And then the Sins of Defense attacked them again. And it does look like their tactics, while they aren't perfect, are, you know, not horrible. The constructive orbs still hung on to boot marks right up until 231, where the Sins of Defense defeated the Prusse Basement at constructive orb and took over boot marks, and the new government was called the Obscure Monster. So Kib, this dwarf was nicknamed. This was the queen that we had in Ironshore. Okay, I want to know about some of their childhood friends. Because this dwarf was born right before the wars started in the year 149, and their best friend was an elf. Their first childhood friend was an elf. What did this elf do? Was born in 148, eldest daughter of Iki and Nathe. Was real good friends with a dwarf, another elf, and a dwarf. And became an animal trainer in 166. Began wandering the wilds. Now, I wonder why that is. Do you think they began wandering the wilds because they didn't agree with the wars? Yeah, it doesn't look like they fought at all. So usually, in my experience, if a character leaves their faction and begins wandering the wilds, it's, yes, they in World Gen, characters can just leave. It's usually because they don't like the goals of that civ, and the goals of that civ can change based on the leadership of that civ. They're pretty basic, they're pretty simple, and not that like complex, the civ's goals. But it seems like this elf left, and I wonder if it's because like two of their childhood friends were dwarves. Lene and Nikalo unite Pine became lovers. So Nikalo, this was Lady Elf, by the way, that we're reading about. Was a member of the Uncertain Order. Was a religion of the mythical flame centered. Okay, so fell in love with an elf that worshipped a human god. So I'm assuming a very human-ish elf. Confronted the mate of the bleak freak Sinur, Sheemdusk, the Crypt of Shades. The mate of the bleak freak Sheemdusk of the Crypt of Shades' lower arm was stabbed. was forced to retreat despite the latter's wounds, and then was confronted by the creature Bride of the Twilight. So either this elf went off just monster hunting, or just wandered the wilds and had some very close calls in 168 and 187 respectively. Broke up with their lover and found a new lover in the same year. This lover was a monster slayer of the factional animals. So back part of the faction they were originally part of. And but it was not a real friendship. It was actually a false friendship, which is kind of funny. Or rather, no, it wasn't a false friendship. Where's the one with the part where they became lovers? Oh, I see. They just became lovers. Okay, so this person was like kind of going around scheming a bit before they became lovers. That's interesting. So found a new lover, and then broke up not like a year later. Became a lover with somebody else. In the spring, the bard Cydia, placeactor of the factional animal, formed a false friendship with Lane in order to extract information and jumped flare, and then was struck down by a creature of the twilight in the turquoise jungle. Was a member of the Flute of Trades, a member of the Scorching Lutes, and a member of the Ashen Creed. What's the Scorching Lutes? An elven group in the mythical plate of the factional animal founded in Jump Flare. Okay. Member of the Doctors of Knighting, a human religion of the mythical plane centered around the worship of Rene, Wild's judged a human god. Was a deity that occurs in the passionate confederacies, was most often depicted as a male human, and was associated with thunder. Okay, so Thor. Got it. So, skipping the king briefly, we're going to read about the captain of the guard in Ironshore. Einod settled in Ironshore, was born of unknown parentage. Became a member of the Long Key, which just means his parents weren't notable. Became a member of the Long Key and fought in many sieges in defense. Became a member of the Walled and Gloved Guilds, respectively. Fought in the Scorching Siege in defense of Ironshore. Fought in the Siege of Brigands in the defense of Ironshore, and became a captain of the guard of the Long Key. Mortally wounded Urvad, who bled to death in Ironshore. All cops are bad. Fought in the Dented Sieges in the defense of Ironshore. Fought in the Siege of Grips in the defense of Ironshore. Created many masterful large serrated green glass discs for the Long Key in Ironshore. Fought in the Siege of Disembowelment in the defense of Ironshore. Fought in the Crazed Attack of Ironshore. Clashed with 57 elves in Ironshore, slaying 8. Clashed with 47 elves in Ironshore and was struck down. Kogan Gutig, Eusteth was Claiborne, a militia commander, born of unknown parentage in 138. He was also was struck down in 229, but clashed with 60 elves. 60. I don't see any notable kills, unfortunately. Their lover seems to have actually outlived them. Your lover also fought in that assault of stabbing, or rather, hold on, what year was that? Yeah, okay, so your lover became a member of the Long Key, became a member of the Guild of Fingers, which was one of the guilds in the Long Key. In 229, the Constructive Orb attacked the landed evisceration of the Flute of Trade at Hammercats. Hammercats is a good name. Rovad led the attack, and the defenders were led by the Elf Medwa. So it seems like your lover went and carried on after. And then in 229, your lover actually left the Constructed Orb and then settled in Tour Shadows and is now the militia commander of the Secret of Orbs, our new fortress. So you might have died, Claiborne, but your lover now lives in Tour Shadows and actually has been doing good work for us. Also, I like how the last defense of our fort was called the Boring Attack of Boring. It was a very boring attack, actually. It has 3 notable kills. So Asteth, who became the king of the Constructed Orb, was actually born back in the time of peace in the year 104 and was the eldest son of Olon Rise Chambers and Logum Doorblown. In the late summer of 123, Asteth became a member of the Still Coven. Okay, the Still Coven. What is the Still Coven? A dwarven religion of the mythical plane centered around the worship of the god Alod. The dwarven god of silence. Ah, yes, I recall this god. I do, in fact, recall this god. We had a temple to them. Okay. So, clearly was a warrior, because while the dwarves were not at war with the elves up until I think it was the year 150 something, we were at war with the goblins. Had an apprenticeship under an elf who was a lady elf who I don't need to read too much about, but what was apprenticed under the elf, moved to Wisp Gifted, which is a place owned, a forest retreat of the factional animal. Okay. So our to-be king actually lived with the elves early on in their life, who we are now at war with, keep in mind. They also completely betrayed us and took over our mountain home. So as we scroll down here, moved to study, authored The Union, just a book called Union was authored by, or maybe a poem, something called Union that I can't click on, so it wasn't a book. Wisp Gifted in order, Union was authored and Wisp Gifted in order to glorify Lane. And Lene was said to permeate in the turquoise jungle and was associated with rivers and nature. Okay, so wrote a poem to glorify an elven force, which is their gods, if you will. And then ceased being the apprentice of the elf in 147. So was the apprentice of this elf and lived with the elves from 128 to 147, right before the wars started. In the midsummer of 150, Asteth became the holy flower of the Still Coven and settled in Jungle Hell. Jungle Hell was a goblin location of the Sins of Defense, which seems to be heavily contested, which we'll read about at some point. Asteth became a holy flower of the Still Coven. So the Still Coven is a very important religion. The god of silence is a very important religion to our king. Asteth settled in Jungle Hell, living in Jungle Hell, and had some lovers, broke up. In 165, became obsessed with his own mortality and sought to extend his life by any means, having ambitions for which death was only a small obstacle. Broke up, has had many lovers, actually married Tekud Machine Earns, who is the fourth eldest daughter of some other dwarves. And then in 229 became king. So our king is a religious leader for the Still Coven, which is a religion that worships the god of silence. They, since then, has decided that they want to become a necromancer. And I think... Okay, and then moved to Hammercats. So I guess Hammercats is the mountain home right now. So in the year 1, the tool of sieges of the constructive orb founded Hammercats. Where the fuck is Hammercats? Seems like it's a heavily contested place. It was owned by the dwarves pretty consistently. Then was attacked by what appears to be goblins. An Etten attacked us. Oh, yeah, looks like the elves attacked in 155 as part of the factional animals attacks. Sorry, no, the Flute of Trade, not the factional animal. The Flute of Trade was the one that attacked us in this site in 155 and actually placed an elf in charge of Hammercats. And then it seems just like the elves had control for a bit. Also, Ultramansions the Solitary Whip is an awesome name for a legendary Copper Spear. So Ultramansions the Solitary Whip was a Copper Spear that was claimed by the Etten that we killed in Ironshore, which is the one that has that family, I think. Or maybe not the one that has the family, but it was definitely the one that attacked us. This was the one that had the crossbow and the the crossbow and the spear, if you guys remember. But anyway, so it looks like the elves just had control over Hammercats for a good chunk of time. But in the year 229, after I retired Ironshore, the constructive orb attacked the lauded veneration of the Flute of Trades, and Hammercats and the dwarf Rovod Wirelife led the attack, who currently lives in Tour Shadows, who was the lover of our so the dwarf that led the attack on Hammercats and actually took over it. It looks like, well, maybe no, not took over it, but attacked it and tried to get it back. Was one of my previous dwarves. The interesting thing about this, though, is it appears that my king is living in a goblin settlement. Because in 229 became king of the constructive orb, is a member of the constructed orb, is the king of the constructed orb, holy flower of the still coven, is a former member of the tin. Okay, so who are the what is the lauded veneration? Okay, so he's a member of the lauded veneration, which is an elven group of the Flute of Trade. Yeah, I would say that he's imprisoned. Because he's the king of the constructive orb, a member of the still coven, a member of the lauded veneration, and the whole the stirred serenity. Okay, so that was the one that he was a member of when he was under apprenticeship. So Cog is apparently dead. Pandasaurus. Cog settled in Ironshore, became a member of the Long Key, and a member of the Company of Dawns. Of course, the Company of Dawns was a farmers' guild. You defended in many sieges in Ironshore. You ripped up an elf, struck down an elf, multiple elves even. Fought in the siege of, and then in the year 229, you fought in. You attacked Helirax. You were part of one of the initial attacks that attacked Helirax. I actually saw this attack in the news and rumors screen because I remember when we founded Tour Shadows, one of the first things I saw was actually an attack coming from Ironshore going directly at the at Helirax. So good for you. You then took part in the fight in boot marks. Which we already know how this story ends. You settled in boot marks and actually got married to somebody named Ognet, and then fought in the Ignited Onslaught in defense of boot marks. And you clashed with 710 goblins, slaying 4. And then you clashed with 650 goblins, slaying 4. And then you clashed with 609 goblins, and it was too much, and you were struck down. The expedition leader of the Secret of Orbs was nicknamed Claiborne. Was a dwarf born in 160 and is the dwarf that is seen in the short on my YouTube channel, the dwarf getting impact blasted by a minecart. Anyway, Eusteth became a member of the Secret of Orbs and settled in Tour Shadows and became an expedition leader of the Secret of Orbs and became romantically involved with Vabok and became a herbalist, but it's fine. The game, crashed, and so it actually was in a different timeline. Became romantically involved with Vobok and became a herbalist in Tour Shadows and gave up being a herbalist to become a farmer and became a member of the Hall of Budding, the Farmers Guild, and gave up being a farmer to become a planter and then ceased to be the expedition leader of the Secret of Orbs and fought with the Onslaught of Slaughter in defense of Tour Shadows and a bunch of other of those. And then that's basically you at this point. You have one lover who first thing they did of note was moving into Tour Shadows. So, drowned, unfortunately. So Risen, the Amethyst Gem, was depicted as a male dwarf and was associated with minerals and metals. Kodal was most often depicted as a female dwarf and was associated with mountains. Taron was most often depicted as a female dwarf and was associated with fortresses, war, and death. It gets a little bit of worshipping, and created the Brilliances of Blocking, which is a legendary shirt slab. All craftsmanship is of the highest quality. The slab reads, the secrets of life and death. Well, Taran, you are an evil god, I would like you to know. We've got the luxurious diamonds, most often depicted as a male dwarf and was associated with wealth and jewels. Rakust was most often depicted as a female dwarf and associated with dreams. Sulil Doskagibdin Lalal Dakas, which was the blankets of coloring, a deity that occurs in the midst of the constructed orb, was most often depicted as a female giant Olm and associated with nature, the sun, light, and mercy. It is very ironic that a blind cave, like, salamander is the god of sun. Sod, dwarven goddess, depicted as a female dwarf, the god of treachery, lies, and trickery. The Alod, the flower of quiescence, is a deity that occurs in the myths of the constructive orb, most often depicted as a male dwarf and is associated with silence. Alod cursed Vubok Mineheat, the plain disembowelment, to become the form of a lizard-like monster in the full moon in Helirax. Oh, that's good. I wonder if this had something to do with the fall of Helirax. Seems like this dwarf was very much a warrior. Lost a fortune gambling. Fought in a bunch more battles. Struck down a goblin. Okay, I see here. Profaned the sanctuary of pondering in Helirax. Got cursed to become a lizard-like monster. Fled to the point of bravery. Became an enemy of a bunch of people. Began accepting bribes in exchange for leniency as the captain of the guard. As the captain of the guard in the blotted construct. So went and joined the blotted construct, which was a dwarven group in the mythical plane in 149. Oh, I see. The elf in this location began accepting bribes in exchange for leniency, and Vabok was one of the people bribing them. So Vabok basically began bribing an elf, I guess, to eat people. Killed a bunch of elves, devoured a porcupine, and was eventually struck down by an elf in the point of bravery. Okay. Okay. Doesn't look like they had anything to do with the start of the war, but... So that's Alod. Did curse somebody to be a lizard-like monster. And then also Alod cursed the goblin Azstrong to become a llama-like monster for throwing off the Emperor's Groove in Call Pests. Call Tempests. There we go. It's terrifying. You don't want to throw off the Emperor's Groove. Down here we have Shurrul, was the deity that occurs in the midst of the constructed orb, depicted as a male dwarf and associated with freedom. And Rumred. Rumred, it was the opposite of red rum and was most often associated with food. God of food.